Hello, hello. Welcome back to Trading Triangle once again on Sunday, the 13th of October. How you doing, Kaye?
I'm doing great. How are you, Sean?
Oh, you almost called me Nate. I must be getting
Yeah,
better.
yeah, exactly. We were just talking about him, so
Yeah, exactly
almost
right.
missed it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, obviously we're just a couple of guys on the internet. Oh, you actually asked me how I'm doing. Yeah, I'm doing really well actually. I'm doing pretty good. I've been working this weekend, unfortunately, but that's the life I live. But yeah, no, obviously we're just a couple of guys on the internet looking at charts. You know, that's what we love to do. So obviously we're not financial advisors, etc. But if you do find some value, and obviously do hit the like button if you are on YouTube. But yeah, that's it. And obviously, once again, thank you very much for letting us use the platform. We really, really appreciate it. Yeah, fantastic. Should we jump into the chat? Oh, actually, one
So, be-
last thing.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, what are you going to say? You go
No,
over.
so before we begin, just for next week, guys, we will be going live on a Saturday because Sunday, there are some events happening in New York, so I will be busy. But we'll go live on Saturday. So if you can join, definitely make sure you join. We will, and we'll do the same routine as usual. Same time works for you, Sean, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, I actually didn't remember that. So thank you for bringing that one up, Kay. That's really, really handy. Obviously, make sure you put your tickers in the comments. We would love to hear what you're kind of looking for. Obviously, we do a little bit of kind of technical analysis and kind of our thoughts around the stock itself. But yeah, anyway, let's jump into the chart, shall we?
Shall we? And we do have a comment. What's your overall sentiment of the market right now going into the next week? That's a perfect question, and we will be answering it right in the beginning as well.
Hang on a minute, I'm getting my layouts all mixed up.
No worries, no worries. Take your time.
There we go. What's
All
the
the
overall
time.
sentiment? Should we go through that now, perhaps, or should we just talk about it as we go through?
Give it a shot. Go for it.
Market sentiment. I think we'll do it when we look at SPY QQQ. That makes sense, right, doesn't it? We'll do that.
Yeah.
So last week's performance was actually pretty good for most stocks, but we do have a couple of red ones on the screen, one of which you cannot see. Let me just jump out of the way. But you've got Tesla there down the bottom right-hand corner, 11.71%. I'm sure you're going to talk about that in just a second, a little bit of a piece on that. Obviously, Google down almost 3%, but we do have like some Nvidia up almost 8%, which is fantastic compared to the rest of the market. And obviously, banks getting a little bit of a hit as well, a positive hit from on the earnings on Friday. And obviously, that will continue on Tuesday morning as well with other banks reporting. Do you want to talk a little bit about Tesla before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know who all got a chance to watch. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people watching the event. I did make a video on the event. I put my thoughts on and shared some trade ideas that you can take advantage of leading up to earnings. I think overall it was a lukewarm response. I mean, if you're a tech fan, great. But if you're an investor, you kind of came out, meh, what happened? So there was a lot of enthusiasm that was built, and because this event was pushed from 8 to 10, I think that's what happened. They were very light on the details, and honestly, for most bears or neutral folks, they were looking for a lot more details. There were, of course, a lot of bullish sentiment. Now, a lot of people will talk about the story on what the future will look like in 2-3 years from now. The problem is that analysts don't look at 2-3 years from now; they look at quarter over quarter. So it's like you're comparing apples to oranges. For if it's going to be bad for next 3 quarters, uh, why would I pay that high price of the stock right now for something that's going to happen 3 years down the road, right? So we can cover more in detail. We can look at the chart as well and see what's going on later. But that's just my thoughts. And I think from Microsoft and Apple standpoint, pretty muted response for this week.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't see the event because I was very much asleep at that time, but I woke up and saw the kind of the highlights and things like that. I'm not the biggest fan of robo taxis generally because I just don't see why we need them, but at least not yet. I guess as the population grows, we might do, but at the moment, I just don't think we need them. But Elon seems to think we do. Anyway, less about that, the better. Last week's performance, obviously, SPY up 1.46%. We've got QQQ at 1.58%. And the rest of them you can see on the left side here. Nothing in the way of news really this week coming up, but I have written down here Fed speakers all week. There's about 2 or 3 every other day. So just be careful of those. Obviously, they can bring out large, impactful statements. And if you're holding trades throughout the day, then that might just kind of waver them in a certain direction, of course. So just keep your eye on there. A good website to keep a track of that is called financialjuice.com. If you're not kind of, in the know for news really, but it's really good for kind of Fed speakers and all the other kind of events as well. CPI, obviously you've written on here plus 0.2% in September. You want to talk to that, Kaye?
Yeah, so we definitely had a little bit a higher CPI, and I thought that we will just start to track these number as well on a week to week so that we have it over here. So it came out 2.4. The expectation was 2.2. Um, there were many factors, but I think what that does to the market is we were expecting a rate cut in November and possibly in December. Now that is up in the air. The jobs number came out pretty well as well, and I think the market will have to kind of readjust itself to see we may not get any more cut for this year, which would be the just a 50 basis point we had. So we'll see how that happens. And if you have noticed, if you're in the US and you put your money in the high yield savings account, you might have already started seeing the impact that a lot of these banks started sending out a rate adjustment. So after the 50 basis point rate cut, we did see a drop in a lot of these banks and their rates that you were getting. So it will even out. So if once they start to lower rates, the banks will lower rates on your high yield bank accounts as well. So just to keep in mind. One thing I just want to talk about here is the VIX. Last week the VIX was in 19. Now it's again over 20. One of the trades that I always do, and maybe you can also just keep in your back pocket. Whenever the VIX drops around the 13 to 14 or in that 15 range, I tend to buy VIX calls expiring maybe 3 months, 4 months, 5 months out, because there are just a lot of events, and generally that plays out very well. And I did the same. I don't have any open position right now because I did sell it off with a decent profit, I would say. But that is one trade that you can always put it in your back pocket, always keep it on your watch list. VIX somewhere between 13 to 14. You can open calls 3, 4, 5 months in advance, and then play it out as you see. Just thought I'll give it an idea.
No, I think people take a lot of value from that. Just on the rate cuts, I do think we are sitting at 93% to have one in November. So I'm pretty sure 0.25 is going to happen in November, whenever the next rate cut is. I think it's November, isn't it?
Yeah, November there is. I don't know. I'm on the fence. They might not do it considering the CPI numbers came up a little bit higher, hotter than expected. If it was in line, maybe. But again, it's up in there. We'll see what happens.
Exactly. And just moving on to the fear and greed index, still sitting at 74, where we were pretty much last week. Just say hi to Sebastian. Obviously, welcome back. We love you joining every week. Hope you're okay. Obviously, you've written down Neo there, which I will gladly cover. I'm sure Kaye won't want me to talk about Neo again, but I will. And obviously, Nay, thoughts on McDonald's. We'll get to that a bit later on.
Yep.
On that subject, obviously, if you do want to have any tickers covered, then please do stick them in the comments. We're happy to cover them. As you can see on the banner, it's just popped up on the screen there as well. So go ahead and put them in the chat. Fantastic. Right, let's move on to earnings. Right, earnings season is among us. The banks kind of reported on Friday. We've got a few more banks on Tuesday. We've got Citigroup, Bank of America, and Charles Schwab, Goldman Sachs as well, and then obviously Morgan Stanley on the Wednesday. I'll let you talk around the rest of it, but I just want to just sneak in here. Netflix, obviously the big one, and I will be streaming that live on my YouTube channel as I have done in the past for Netflix. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, and kind of live commentary and live results, etc., then do go ahead and join me over there. Okay, talk about the rest of the board.
Yeah, no, I think for me personally, I think watching ASML and TSMC along, you said Netflix, of course, that and SLB, because I have positions in all of those. That's why I'll be watching them. But I think this kind of kicks off our official earning season for Q3. Q3? Yeah, Q3. Q4. Q4 earning season, but they'll report Q3.
Yeah.
And this is it. Next week, we'll probably start hitting more tech. And then it's just going to be next 2, 3 weeks will be very, very busy from an earning standpoint.
Exactly. I think the week after is like Tesla and all of that. So always a busy time during earnings. But we love it as traders, of course, because it brings the volatility to the markets and it brings those kind of opportunities in front of our eyes and ultimately in front of everyone that's watching eyes as well. So we're happy to go through that.
Before we jump on the SPY, Raminder did mention that taking VIX puts when it's elevated is a good idea. It is, but generally, from my perspective, having call options are a little bit better, I guess. I mean, because I think market in general just moves forward. But again, that's also a good idea. I'm not debating on that. I generally don't buy puts on the downfall. I'm more of a bullish trader, even though Sean has the official title for a bullish trader here, but I tend to stay away from puts. But again, that's also a valid strategy. You can definitely take that.
Nice. Moving on to the SPY then. So it's been a very green week. So we can see obviously the trading days here. Monday we kind of traded flat and then moved downwards, and then it's just been up, up, and up, and since then. We had a CPI come on Thursday, which was a bit of a mixed bag, but obviously the real estate side of things are looking pretty good. And then the PPI on Friday, which kind of came in nicely, and the jobs came in hot, as you mentioned. But generally, the sentiment is pretty positive in the market. And I'm going to go ahead and say my sentiment now, because obviously we did say we were going to talk about sentiment. I forget who commented about that. I think it was Road to 100K. So yeah, this is where we're going to talk about that. Sentiment for the stock market at the moment, I think it's going to be a bit potentially bumpy going into the election. So we've got the election on November 5th or 6th, something like that.
November 5th, yes.
Yeah, so that would be interesting to kind of see what comes out of that. But I think generally, as you can see on the screen, we're kind of following this trend line at the moment. And it's a little bit sticky in the last few weeks, a little bit, basically it's calmed down a bit, as you can see throughout this kind of period of time. Very erratic. So we're just kind of calming down a bit. And I can see it's just kind of slowly, gradually getting up here in the next couple of weeks. And then that week before the election, I think it could get pretty messy. To the downside personally, but we'll see what happens there. But one thing I always wanted to kind of touch on is we're only 3.55% away from 600 on the SPY, which is mental in my opinion. 3.55% is not a lot, given the market moves that we've seen in the last few months, by the last couple of years, really. So it'd be interesting to see where we go. What's your sentiment, Kaye?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think moving up to the election time frame is when it's going to be very volatile per se. So we may see a great day, we may see a great pullback, and I think October in general. I saw this chart somewhere that generally during election years, going back to I think 1950s or 60s, October is probably the worst month because of a lot of volatility. But once the election results or election is over, results come out, regardless of who wins, whoever you want to vote for doesn't matter. Market wants certainty, and I think they will get that certainty on November 6th on who the next president is going to be. And I think that is when the market starts to rally. So the election year, November, December are generally good months, and but again, next 2 weeks are going to be very volatile because you have a lot of earnings coming out. So if you have any of the companies, any big tech reporting poor earnings, poor guidance, is just going to drag the market down. On top of it, you have concerns about whether we'll get a rate cut or not. On top of it, you have election. So a lot of on top of it, you have geopolitical concerns that are going on. So very interesting 2 weeks. I think as a trader, we love this. But yeah, we'll see how it goes out. That's my sentiment.
And the irony behind that is basically no news this week as well. So you've got all of this leading up to it, but that actually this week is pretty quiet, so to speak. So we'll see what happens around that side of things. But it's going to be an interesting few weeks, that's for sure, leading into the election. Fantastic. Do you want to talk about the chart much on SPY, or should we move on to QQQ?
No, I think we're good. I think just making all-time highs, and yeah, it's crazy that we'll hit 600 at some point in time in this year. We may very well.
Awesome. I think just a little touch on this one, and this little bounce here was really crucial on Thursday. So that's kind of given the market a little bit of technical support moving upwards. Anyway, moving on to the QQQ. This one looks a little bit more exciting, kind of breaking out of this wedge that we've been talking about for the last few weeks.
Yep.
I'll basically leave it at that. I've got a couple of levels here at 500, which is obviously psychological, a big number for the Qs. And obviously 503 is previous all-time highs back in July.
Yep.
So just honestly, if we're kind of looking at that kind of positive sentiment going into the rest of the year, you expect these levels to be in contention of being hit, basically. And that's it, really. That's all I've got to kind of add for the QQQs. Obviously, for the downside, if we do reject off of this trend line, because we still haven't really had a clean break of it, to be fair. So we could still come back down to kind of 476 this level, maybe 480. But yeah, that's the kind of how I see the QQQ.
Yeah. And 484 is where the biggest volume shelf is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we actually do get a pullback to 484. But again, that is very contingent upon the fact how the tech reports earnings in the next 2-3 weeks. Nvidia, by the way, might be blowing out the earnings again, but we'll cover it when it comes, considering that Blackwell is now on back order until I think late 2025 or something like that.
Wow, incredible scenes for NVIDIA, especially the investors that have been in for the last few years. I actually missed that run, which I'm not angry about at all. But yeah,
So you can be angry.
I'm very happy for other people, of course. Thank you for the suggestions coming in. Obviously, we've got DDOG, ALAB,
Yep.
CRUS, and we've got BOA and Johnson Johnson
Yep.
and United Healthcare, I think is the other one, UNH.
Yep. Yep.
So I hope you're writing those ones down. Thank you. Keep them coming. And we're happy to go through them. Now, I think it's my charts now. Yeah. So first up, we've got Google. And I quite like this for a bit of a setup. We may have had that kind of initial move first, but I like the confirmation of getting through this trend line is ultimately what I'm going to be talking about here. So you can see on the screen, the big blue lines represent a head and shoulders pattern. Now, not all the shoulders, have to be perfect, of course. So it's a little bit higher, but it's kind of come in conjunction with the 200 moving average, which is this red line flowing through the screen. I've highlighted some dots here, and that's my kind of confluential points. Obviously, we've got the volume profile here, the 200 moving averages I spoke about, and the 50 moving average as well. What would make this a better entry is obviously if we break through this like concretely, come back down and retest this kind of level of 164 again, that would be kind of an entry point to go up higher to 177.60. Thereabouts. I mean, you probably would actually go to the gap fill, which is around 183, which I probably should have marked out, but that's okay. But ultimately, I think Google's in a good position, and if we can get that confirmation of a break of this kind of area of around 164, 165, then I think we can easily make a move to kind of 177. Given everything else that's happening as well. One thing I would say, and I think it's probably what you're going to say, is earnings obviously just around the corner, and that is and that is around kind of the 20th of October, I think, ish. So, yeah, that's kind of it for me on Google. I like the setup. I'm just waiting for a little bit extra confirmation. But I think a few people would have added around this area, especially the long-term holders. Don't know if you agree with that.
No, I definitely agree with you, because I generally, from an investing standpoint, have a pretty straightforward philosophy that whenever stocks are around the 200-day moving average, I tend to add them. Now, depending upon the asset allocation of the stock, I may add a lot, I may add medium or less, or whatever be the case. But I definitely tend to add. Now, you are trading GOOG, not GOOGL, right? They're pretty much similar in pricing. You just pay a little bit more premium on GOOGL because it's a Class A stock where you can vote. In this one, GOOG don't vote. But pretty much, I think I'm liking this spot, because I am actually trading this as we are talking. So as we are in this particular phase of kind of barcoding, as I like to call it. This particular level is, I really like the 162 level. And this is where I've been adding to my long-term position, as well as trading at these levels. One other thing I want to also talk about from a Google standpoint is when they report earnings, we want to really see how Google is progressing on the AI front. We are seeing how they are able to monetize, or they are not able to monetize. We really want to check on that. But I think Google in general, I think from a long-term standpoint, it's a beast, just like Microsoft, just like Apple. I wouldn't bet against it.
Exactly right. Good words there from an experienced investor. Awesome. I'm on the wrong page. Hang on, this page. There we go. Next up, we've got Mara. Now, this one's going to be a bit more of a technical blowout, I guess, for me. Bitcoin is doing pretty well. I had a good reaction on Friday. Over the weekend, it's been trading pretty flat, slightly down. But I'm not worried about the weekend's price action too much. But what we have technically here for Mara is quite exciting. So we've got, again, the highlighted areas are confluential points. Let me just move the camera so you can see the other one. Big volume coming in on Friday, as you can see on the screen. Obviously a lot bigger than anything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So that's exciting on that side of things. Let me switch back. We've got 2 confluential points here of the 20 moving average and the 50 moving average. And that could also be 3 if we get through the trend line. And then another one, obviously the volume profile is sitting around the $16 level, which makes sense because obviously all the price action is around that level on the screen. Now, if we do get through this trend line, I expect it to probably move through and probably not retest, because that's the nature of this sort of stock. Once it goes, it goes. I'm not saying get in or anything like that. It's not a financial advice, but I'm just saying that these stocks, they can just go, especially if they break through a particular technical level. So first port of call is obviously $19, as you can see here, this first line coming through the screen, and that represents 18%. I'd probably take a little bit off the table there just to be safe, and it's a pretty good return, even just from taking a bit off the table. 18% is not too bad, especially if you're trading with leverage, but that's not my bag to tell you what to do. And then the second one is $23, which is a little bit higher, a little bit more challenging, especially given that the 200 moving average is in the way. But we can see that has a history of just blasting through that, as you can see on the screen there. And that represents 43%, which is actually pretty damn good. On the safe side of things, we do have the stop loss currently set about 14.30. Now, I must say I'm not in this trade, but I'm thinking about getting this trade, full honesty there. But my stop loss is obviously a bit of a bigger one, but I believe is one that could hopefully hold up moving forward. If it triggers, it triggers. That's trading. You can't win them all. So yeah, I'm going to stop rambling now for Mara, but what do you think around these sorts of charts? I know you've traded this one in the past.
Yeah, so I'm actually in this trade right now for Mara. So I have some different levels because I'm using Fibonacci retracement on my side. So right now, the 1418, which is a little bit lower than the stop loss that you have, that is my bottom level, support level, and from there we have had a little bit of a bounce, couple times, few touches, and then right now I would say the resistance would be about 1699. So that's the range that I'm currently playing. If we get a breakout, of course my options will expire worthless because I'm mostly into the selling option strategy. However, I do have call options, but I also feel like the 1919 is going to be a big resistance, considering it is we used to have that as a support level for a long time, and we haven't really crossed the 200-day moving average since August, beginning of August.
Yeah.
So unless we have some major catalyst for Mara that happens, I would basically play for this range that we have. And if you sell options on a weekly basis, then you can do much tighter bid and ask. So you can probably look at more selling a 14, getting out at 15 or something like that, or even covered calls, which are at the money. I wouldn't aim for too much because you will still get a good premium on it.
Yeah.
That's just my take on the Mara.
I would say that the range is getting tighter as well. So we've got a bit of a larger move here, but then it's getting a little bit tighter as we move forward. But I see what you're saying. Obviously, moving up to kind of this area, and we're kind of waiting around this area to see if it will break out from there. Obviously, you're not that kind of trader, but that's kind of how we're kind of linking together there.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. One to watch, I think. One to add to your watch list and see how it performs. Of course, it could go completely downwards, and that's what happens with these types of stocks. And they're very, very volatile. So just do be careful when you're trading these. It's basically trading Bitcoin on leverage, is how I see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that's me. You can get me on X. I post plenty of charts on there, and I've got something very exciting coming at the end of November, which I'm excited to release to everyone. It's just a little project I've been working on for a couple of months now. So yeah, looking forward to that. YouTube, you can get me, especially through earnings season. I'm going to go live quite a few times to give my thoughts on the earnings, and obviously the earnings call will be there for you to listen to. And of course, you can get me on Substack as well, but there's no point subscribing to that because I don't actually release anything. But if you feel like supporting me on Substack, go ahead and hit subscribe. One last subscribe is you subscribe to the Trading Triangle YouTube channel because we never actually post it and we always forget. But we are actually live on YouTube as well as X. So head on over to YouTube and do subscribe to that because we do have a few ideas that we want to pop off, towards the end of the year, hopefully. Anyway, that's it from me. Let's hand over to Kaye.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate it, and thanks to Wolf for giving us the platform to do the show. Definitely subscribe to Wolf if you haven't done. Okay, the first one is both the stocks that I have are semiconductor. So the first one is Broadcom AVGO. Now this one is more like a W pattern, and I wanted to kind of talk about this one because there's in a W pattern generally it is a bullish pattern, and we have seen this nice higher highs, especially for this particular stock. Now, again, it has made a lot of highs, and it's above its 200-day to 20 and 50 SMA generally, but overall, it's still very bullish from my perspective, at least that I'm looking at it. I'm looking from a fundamental standpoint, very bullish. I'm looking from a technical standpoint on this pattern. It is also very bullish. So now, considering November, December, historically have been good months for stocks. If you are looking to trade, this could be a good opportunity to get in, especially as it starts to make higher highs. Now, if I want to get in at a spot, I would target this volume shelf of about 170, maybe even 172, 73, that level. Yeah, exactly. So that once it pulls back to those levels, I can get in and then wait for the breakout to happen. If you are into the breakout trading, and of course, Sean, you can tell me your thoughts on that. But from a option seller standpoint, I would probably have a much tighter bid and ask. So maybe looking at something around 30 delta, which would be closer to the 177, 178 mark to get in, and then probably selling off your covered calls at the money to just generate a lot of premium on that. So, couple ideas. What do you think, Sean, on this one?
I do like this. I feel like maybe it might have already tried to break out, but this really nice candle that it set on Friday come all the way down to that kind of 180 level-ish, or maybe not that, around that sort of level, and then kind of aggressively push back up and finish quite nicely on the day. It's a fairly green day around the whole market, I think, on Friday, but the nature of the candle is quite exciting. But, that's not everything. I mean, you can see that the previous resistance around here, whatever level that is, maybe 174-ish. I would like it to maybe just make a full return back down to here, and that should coincide with the 20 moving average. That would be the ideal entry for a breakout trade, in my opinion, because then we've had the full kind of move all the way down, and then entry point here, and hopefully, obviously, we move higher. Do we have earnings anytime soon? I'm guessing no, as the
Let me check.
space across these is quite big, so I'm guessing not for a while.
It's December, so we have
Okay.
more than what 6-7 weeks before.
So there's plenty of trading days for this to kind of, act out, as I've kind of suggested, and coming back down to these levels and making a move higher up to kind of 200, which would be probably my target. Obviously, you don't really have a target. It's all-time high, as you say, isn't it?
It's all-time high, and this is going to be more like a swing play than a day trading.
But I would definitely take some off the table around 200, because that's psychological level, and then probably just keep my stop loss behind the 20 moving average. Typically what I do anyway. But yeah, no, I like this. I like how well it's performing, definitely. I think your testament to your kind of thesis around 200 moving average adding for the long term really comes in nicely on this stock.
Yeah.
We missed that opportunity, didn't we?
Yeah, and then the reason I was like, this definitely screams as a W pattern, is because generally in a W pattern, the second lower should be higher than the previous lower. So which is exactly happening over here. You can see it's making lower, higher highs and lower lows. No, higher
lows.
I always confuse this one. But
Lows.
yeah, exactly. So high low. So this is what I think is happening. It's just a good swing trade that I think could play well into the. Now I haven't entered this position yet, but I will definitely be looking at around the volume shelf that I talked about to probably start a swing position in this one.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right, next one. This one I love it. Another a Qualcomm. Now, a couple things on Qualcomm is, of course, the earnings are coming up. So this earning is what, in 3 weeks or so? Yeah, three and a half weeks. The stock is actually hovering right below the 200-day moving average. And if you notice, it has been on this trend line, not a trend line, but on this 169.21 level, is just trying to break through that level. And the 200-day being its main resistance level for a long time. Classic option seller stock where you can have trade in this range on a week to week basis. From a long term, from a swing trading standpoint, I think there are 20 up revisions for the earnings. So short term, there is a lot of bullish sentiment going towards earnings. So you can definitely, as long as they perform well and they have a good guidance, I think we may be able to see newer highs. Now, I don't expect it to go all the way, make all time high, but I think going up to 180 might be a possibility, because that's when the next resistance level will start to come in. So we could play that to the earnings, to the for the breakout. Or if you want to be super careful, then you can of course have a stop loss around this 163, 164. That's where it has bounced off multiple times in that volume shelf.
So I really like this, partially because this, where do I start? So you've got lots of resistance around this area.
Yeah.
You can see it even back in March, around this level, around here, and then obviously always basically like a flat line. It's like a really solid resistance point.
Correct.
And a lot of times I would say I'll wait for it to get above the resistance, come back down and retest it. But I think in this case, I wouldn't mind having a little nibble now. I know it's below the 200 moving average, but it's showing signs of wanting to get through it. It's got 1, 2, 3 tests in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this to kind of really give it another go, especially with other semis going up. Nvidia, AMD kind of breaking resistances, etc., and trend lines. So why not Qualcomm kind of following the same direction? So I like a little nibble at this in the next couple of trading hours. To be honest with you, maybe wait for the first hour tomorrow, but. Yeah, I really like the setup, and I think just going on top of that, you can probably draw a wedge. So imagine a trend line from here all the way up through here, and obviously a trend line from this peak down here.
Yep.
That's another point of technical analysis that I like. So yeah, I mean, Sebastian, you say you brought this one up last week. My memory is not that good, but I'll take your word for it. But yeah, this is definitely one that I like for the week ahead, and I really appreciate you bringing this one up, Kaye.
Yeah, so that is both semiconductors for this week. And yeah, you can find me on X. Of course, I'm pretty active over there. I do post throughout the week on different charts and stuff like that. Follow me on YouTube as well if you want to know what's happening with Tesla, the latest events, my thoughts, my trades. Definitely check that out. And Substack, I've been light as well, just like Sean, but feel free to subscribe. More to come, in especially in the new year, as I start to plan how to grow the Substack account.
How are those SoFi trades doing? Because I know you follow SoFi on your channel, and it's going pretty well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all my trades for SoFi have pretty much, and as an option seller, I'm very happy because most of them will expire worthless. I've already collected the majority of the premium, so I might even close them early. If SoFi breaks around the 10, I think most of the theta decay will come in much faster, and I'll be able to close and get most of the value out of the contract.
That's exciting stuff. Right, this is the bit that everyone waits for. It's the audience request. So to go ahead and stick them in. Although we do have quite a lot, probably will take us through to 7 o'clock. So if you do want to sneak in a couple more, if you're watching, do go ahead and we will try and get to them. But we do have about 10, 15 lined up. So very excited to jump into it. What have we got first, Kaye?
First is Microsoft.
Microsoft, yes. This was a pre-stream request. And I recently looked at this chart, and everything technical doesn't look good. But the way that the market is going, like SPY, QQQ, etc., it could just save it. Because, for example, if we have a day tomorrow where kind of Apple, Amazon, SPY, etc., is just going up, then it might just pull up the Microsoft. On the other hand, we do have the negative side of things. Of course, Microsoft could push the SPY down. So we do obviously have a lot of resistance here. With the trend line, the 50 moving average and the 20 moving average all coming in, and the volume profile actually coming in as resistance. So there is a lot of resistance there. It's actually 4 points of resistance. So this is actually a sell setup. However, I am quite bullish on the actual market, of course. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, that's kind of what I kind of spoke a bit more than I wanted to there on Microsoft. But yeah, it's an interesting point. Any thoughts? This pink line actually is the earnings, by the way. But any thoughts on Microsoft?
No, I think I would rather wait on Microsoft. I'm not playing Microsoft anytime soon, but I'm definitely adding Microsoft on the weakness because it's right below the 200-day moving average. So from a long-term investing standpoint, definitely adding that. I mean, we mentioned it Microsoft last week. I think that the key for Microsoft is how are they going to monetize their AI investment. That's pretty much it. And I don't want to waste too much time on that. If you want, we can move to the next one.
Of course, and I think we'll probably get more indication on that on the 30th of October, which is their earnings. So
yeah. So next one, I do want to touch Netflix. Again, I put this request in because this is the earnings week coming up. So if anybody who is in Netflix or planning to take Netflix as a trade, I mean, remember those days of not Mag 7, FANG stocks?
Yeah.
And Netflix just lost its seat at the table. And this stock has been like, I just don't know what to say. I mean, if you zoom out for a while, you will just see this continues to make higher highs and just keeps going up. And when it does have created a lot of gaps throughout the run up. But at this point of time, I mean, I'm not going to be adding anything because I do want to wait for a pullback, just like you have Meta also in making higher highs. But yeah, it's an absolute beast when it comes to streaming services. And I just know like 3 years ago, everybody was like, "Oh, Disney is going to eat Netflix lunch and blah blah blah." And hey, here we are.
It's the king of streaming, isn't it? Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
I mean, first mover advantage. It's not that easy to just come in and take the market share. But hey, it is what it is.
One thing that gets me on this chart is I was really frustrated I didn't set a price alert because I had this level set, a few weeks ago around about here, and I thought, okay, it's moved up here, maybe it'll come back down and retest it. It did, but I didn't know about it until it was up here. So that's interesting. Always set your alerts. I'm really bad at setting my alerts. It's one of my bad habits. What I would say is there's a bit of a bearish engulfing here, but it doesn't really mean much going into obviously.
I mean,
earnings
bearish
and so forth,
engulfing at that level, I mean, it has created so many gaps in the run up that you would want the stock to actually come and fill the gap around 507 all the way into 535. Right now it's 736. So
Yeah.
that's a massive drop for the gap fill to happen. It will happen at some point in time. We just don't know if it's going to be right now or it will take. It's a 30% drop from there to fill the gap.
Which gap are you talking about?
It's the gap from 535 going down to 500, 504, and that
Oh
gap,
wow! So you're talking about all the way down
that
here.
is 4 earnings ago. Yes, exactly. So that gap has not been filled yet. That's a 30% drop on the stock.
Wow, that is a that is a pretty big drop. Not all gaps fill though, Kaye.
Not all gaps do fill. It's just that we don't know where it will fill. It might take 4 years for the gap to fill.
Yeah, but not all gaps fill. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, Netflix won't, be the king forever. You'd like to think, anyway. Anyway, moving on.
The problem with that is that, I mean, they won't be king, but as long as they remain number one, that's what matters, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to the next request. Is your favorite stock Neo?
Yeah. So I actually had a request to do HSI, so I'll kind of do that in tandem with Neo.
Okay.
Over the weekend, obviously, we'd had a bit of more stimulus news saying that we're going to go harder, but we don't know when that's going to be. We do have Chinese CPI coming over tonight. Sorry for all the lines. It's like a barcode, I know. But we do obviously have Chinese CPI coming out tomorrow, which obviously won't be impacted by the cuts just yet, but we'll see. Sorry, not cuts, hikes. I don't know, whichever one it is. But technically, Neo actually looks pretty good. It's been a bit of a flat week, which is actually quite refreshing, given what's happened here. Just calming down a bit, bringing up those moving averages. We also have a little bit of a golden cross coming through, which I mentioned last week. It would only take a few days, but I'm guessing, I was wrong, and which is fair enough. What I really want to see is obviously a push up back up higher towards this kind of 720 level. I'm absolutely butchering this section of Neo, and I do apologize to people who are watching me for Neo. But I do think that we can make this push higher, back up to kind of $7. I know it's a bit of a large marker, but technically it looks like it could do that. Contrary to that, I think if we have a little bit of bad news, perhaps it wasn't perceived as well. CPI comes in, as consumers are not expecting. We move back down to 565, and I think honestly, really easily back down to the 200 moving average, which is sitting currently about 520, which is completely fine. Given the move that we've had, it's been over 100% move. Obviously not now, but the whole move has been about 100%. So yeah, in conclusion, I think it's healthy. Where we are at the moment, it's healthy. HSI, just moving on quickly. Similar sort of ballpark. I've got much less lines on this, which is good. I can actually see what's going on. Similar sort of ballpark. It's kind of a bit of a pullback. It's really nice to see. And obviously, if we just kind of trade sideways from now, I wouldn't be surprised. That's absolutely fine. And then obviously find a bit of a base and then create like a wedge, for example, and then make another move higher. I don't see it going a lot lower than this. Obviously, we can come back down to these levels, and that'd be again completely fine at a 19,000 level. But anything below that, then I'm not too sure.
And you said the CPI is coming out next week or Monday?
Tonight.
Okay.
Well, I guess Chinese market, before the Chinese market opens. It's about 12 a.m. here, but I don't know what it is your time. Probably 7,
About
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah.
on the eastern coast. So yeah, just be aware of that. See what happens there. But on the weekly chart, it looks pretty good as well. It's held up this 200 moving average on the HSI. So long term, I think HSI is in a good place. But I just think the next couple of weeks could be a bit choppy, especially with the US election and the kind of the relationship they have between the two countries might just kind of create some volatility, shall we say. That's my piece on NEO and HSI. It's a bit messy. I do apologize for people that are watching, but you kind of got the general gist of what's going on there.
All
What's
right.
next?
Next is McDonald's, MCD.
I want to take a break here and let you talk about this one.
McDonald's. Let me see. I have looked at this chart forever. I think it's first of all, it's trending very nicely. It's on an uptrend, nicely tracking the 20-day SMA. Let me see on the volume profile also. Let me just add the volume profile. I think good volume coming in at the levels of 301. And let me just also see if there is any specific news on McDonald's. Um, it was a disappointment that nothing happened in the robotaxi event with McDonald's.
Oh
Considering,
yeah, because they
they had a 1010 ad on one of the yeah. I mean, let me see. There's nothing I can like. Is this from a trading standpoint, or is it more like
Well, they just said thoughts on McDonald's at the beginning. It was, I don't know how to say the name. Nay, I guess, with lots of dollar signs and diamond hands and stuff.
okay,
It just said thoughts on McDonald's.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I don't see the trend reversal. It seems like kind of plateauing at the top around 306. It's not making the higher highs. If you notice at the almost the last 10 trading days or so. Um,
yeah,
so again, I'm not going to be if I'm investing it, I'm not going to be adding at all-time highs. I would wait for pullbacks. The next volume shelf I would look at around 285. That's where a lot of support is coming in as well for the stock. But I don't see a trend reversal yet on this stock, so it could continue to go higher. um,
yeah.
for,
I mean, a trend reversal, you need to see a lower high first
yeah.
of all, maybe a moving average broken, maybe a trend line broken, and you just don't see that here, do you?
No, not yet, not yet.
No, but obviously it could happen. Okay, you're very good at analyzing, Sebastian says.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks, man. I'm still learning.
I agree, very much so. You bring a bit more into the fundamentals. I just look at the lines on the screen.
No, you guys are much better in the technical side. Should we move to the next one?
Of course, new balance between us. Yeah.
Datadog, DDOG. If you want, I can talk on that because I was on a losing trade in this one.
This is your ballpark. You go for it.
Yeah, so this is a SaaS company for those who don't know. So this one is very interesting. They have this massive gap at 83 to 96.
Oh,
Okay.
I've actually drawn that. Yeah.
Yes, you probably have it there exactly. So they have broken this trend line. That's a good sign. But I would want to wait for a couple more confirmation that we really have a breakthrough because this little break in the trend line happened around July as well, and then eventually we just couldn't sustain it and came back down. So I would want to wait for more confirmation that we do have a uptrend on this one. But I think the last couple trading days, they were able- they it the trend line downtrend line has been like they broke it very nicely. But I don't like this doji candle at the end, the second one on Friday. I would want to
Yeah.
wait for couple more confirmations before I get involved in it. Um, just to keep in mind from a SaaS standpoint, the whole industry is still facing the same problems, right? IT spending is very scarce, so you have to keep that in mind. And as the interest rate goes down, we'll see how that plays out with the IT spending. But generally, IT spending is lower in Q4 because most companies who run their finances from Jan to in a calendar year setting, this is their budget season. So most of the companies and departments within those companies are trying to get the budget for their department. So you may not see spending going until like the first quarter of next year. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, this unfortunately I had to close my trade on this one. I've been in this trade for a long time. I was hoping that we will eventually get to. By the way, it's a buy zone for me if it fills that gap at some point. Datadog, long term position.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's a long way down from here, isn't it? Just a recent move of 23% is quite magnificent. Sebastian says a nice retest of the 200 moving average here would be good. So that's, yeah, again, I just drew a line here while you were talking there, just kind of from the recent highs, making slightly lower highs, since the beginning of the year. So you would expect a little bit of resistance here, but I mean, of course, if it does powers a bit higher, then that could be an interesting point to kind of come to 134-ish and then maybe retest this line, which is set as well. So things to look forward to moving forward with Datadog. Should we move on?
Yeah, next is ALAB.
Astera Labs.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, they haven't been a stock for very long.
Oh yeah,
They came in
April.
I've got 20th of March here that they accepted.
Yes.
Yeah. So that, well, I mean, I don't know much about them. I imagine there's something space related.
Semiconductors.
Oh, okay. All the rage. I mean, generally, I mean, technical wise, it's
Wall
tricky.
Street has a strong buy on this one.
Okay, I'd have to look into the actual company itself, but you can see a nice line here already. Two nice bounces off the support line, obviously a bit of a breakthrough, and then a bit of resistance here. So that kind of 55.20 level seems interesting. Maybe if we got, we've got a bit of a viciously topping candle on Friday, went all the way up to 70, pulled back down to 66. So I'd expect it to kind of move downwards a little bit, going forward. Whether we get down to this 55 level, I'm not too sure, but that's the level I've got drawn on here for sure. So nothing really much else to say, really.
Here's just a quick news on that. So the shares jumped 27% because they introduced a new fabric switches for AI infrastructure. And because of that, they got a positive analyst coverage on the stock. So
it's not a bad thing, is it? It's not a bad thing at all.
Earnings is coming up on 11/4. Something to watch. I'm actually adding this in my watch list. I did not even know about this stock.
And that's the beauty of doing these sessions and getting people involved with the tickers, because we get to find new opportunities every week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Next up is CRUS. I've heard of this stock, but I've never traded it.
I've never even heard of it. Not too sure. Cirrus Logic, not too sure what they even do.
Let me see. Let me tell you what it does.
Well, just recently gap filled. That's good.
So they are also a semiconductor. They develop low power, high precision mixed signal processing solutions in China and US and internationally.
Sebastian likes his semiconductors at the moment.
Yep. It's another one. Now let me add it to my watch list on this one too.
I like the recent gap fill. So we had a gap fill the gap was created, at the beginning of August, and then gapped up really nicely actually on that day. A bit of a pullback throughout the day, but still, price action since then has been very positive and obviously very negative at the same time. But the gap filled recently, actually this week, twice almost, and that's actually, if you dive down into the lower time frame, that's actually really bullish, because you can see the fact here. Obviously, it's made the lowest point here, 116. And then tried again to break that level, and then set a higher low just here, just above 116. So you can see that the buyers are kind of coming in now. I wonder what the RSI is looking like. RSI is still quite nice, around 43, so that's not too bad at all. Potential move coming, if we can get through maybe this trend line here.
So they're past their earnings, so let's see if there's any... Actually, their earnings is coming up on 10:30.
Apparently a big Apple supplier. Supply Apple, not literally apples. Unless it is Apple, those do supply apples, but I highly doubt it. Anyway, CRUS, definitely one to look out for. I'm looking at this one this week for sure. Thank you once again, Sebastian, for bringing that up.
Sebastian always brings some good stuff. Next is BOA. Is it Bank of America?
Yeah. No, Bank of America is BAC.
Okay, so what is BOA?
Bank of East Asia, I've got here.
Did I read that right? BOA?
I'm pretty sure we did because I've got that down here as well. BOA.
Bank of East Asia. Okay, that's interesting. That's in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, if it is that, then
Okay.
I mean, I'm not too sure how we're going to cover this because there's not much volume.
Okay. All right.
We'll move on, shall we?
Yeah, J and J.
Is that just JJ?
J and J. J and J. N as a Nancy.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson.
Johnson and Johnson.
I don't really cover healthcare at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice. They're almost. If you draw the resistance at the 171, you have a decent move up. Let's see. Let me draw the
171.
Yeah, I mean that's like all-time highs kind of like going on, unless 173 was their all-time high from 2022.
Are we looking at the same chart? Because I've got all-time high at 186.
Really? Maybe I was an hourly or something like that. That's why. I don't cover Jane. I mean, I don't invest in healthcare either. But
I think clearly none of us do.
yeah, we are both lost at this J&J. It's like, what's going on here? Why don't you tell us about some of a technical standpoint while I take a look at these?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's got a bit of resistance coming up at this kind of 20 and the 50 moving average. The 20 has respected quite a lot, especially in recent trading. So you'd expect it to maybe come back down off of that. I imagine I think they have earnings on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think I saw that on my sheet earlier.
10:15. So
it says it right here.
Tuesday. Yep.
Tuesday. So that's obviously one to look out for. Not really one I trade. I don't really trade dividend stocks at all, generally, apart from the big boys, the tech companies. But yeah, I don't really have many thoughts, even from a technical point of view. We've got a bit of support here, maybe a higher low set, this kind of area.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously creating a lot of volume. So maybe if we can get back up to 168. But even then, you're looking at that and the percentage return is not, amazing. It's only about 4%.
So the only thing I'll add is that from the upcoming earnings, they do have a EPS down revision for 16 analysts. Their actual revenue for last quarter was 22.45 billion, and they're estimating 22.17. So basically, they did less in this quarter expected. So if they can beat it, great. But I don't know if this is not something that we trade often. It's not a trading stock. Next is United Healthcare. This is a beast of a stock. This is also in the especially for QQQ and all those big ETFs. This is a pretty big chunk.
Look at this. I've obviously done previous analysis and I've gone, look at these higher lows. They look fantastic. Look what happened after it. Big explosion off of that. Fantastic. Obviously, I didn't trade that because otherwise I would have spoken about the trade, but I didn't do it. Carry on. Sorry.
Yes, so for some reason I don't consider these stocks as a trading stock. I always consider them as like investing stocks because they are more dividend friendly. But I think between J&J and UNH, I think I would rather look at UNH more, considering it's in the insurance sector. So generally, healthcare is a very solid industry to be in. You generally don't see much downtrend going on because you will always need healthcare, whether it's insurance, whether it's medical devices or whatever be the case, or hospitals.
Yeah.
We do have down revisions on this as well. Their earnings is also on Tuesday, UNH. So you might want to wait. If it's a miss, that will give you an opportunity to add to your position.
Is there an average move for earnings at all or not?
Yes, let me also pull that up.
Because I like this level around 552 to 557. I've kind of drawn two lines here, a bit of a zone. But if we do get a bit of a negative price action on the earnings, it could be interesting to look into the report. 3%.
Yeah.
If we do get that kind of negative move on earnings, perhaps that would be the level I look for a bit of a retest, maybe a move higher, depending on what the earnings say, what guidance says, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is SMCI.
SMCI, everyone's favourite. Okay, it seems to have had a good week. This is still the weekly chart. Yeah, it's fighting back a bit, isn't it? Definitely. I mean, Monday was a really good day. Tuesday it gapped up, came back down, and kind of traded flat for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which is surprising given Nvidia's move this week. But I guess the week generally actually pretty good for SMCI. Let's have a look. Open there, closed there. 14%. Actually, that's not too bad at all. Oops.
Yeah, and I mean, I would, if I want to get in, I would aim for that volume shelf at 43.
This one here.
Or actually, sorry, I would rather aim for a 39, a 40 entry on this one. For a
So you're looking around about here, aren't you? Yeah.
I mean, unless they make the big volume shelf as the next support line.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is this RSI divergence seems to be playing out nicely so far, and that's a triple threat as well, not the normal double that you get.
Correct.
But if you can get through that 50, then I think that's confirmed. But the RSI is getting a bit frothy already. It hasn't actually moved that much. It's above 50 already. So
yeah, I mean, so support could be a good 20 could be a good support, right? Where the volume shelf also comes in, but the 50 is definitely a resistance on this one.
Yeah, I think trading it would be pretty tricky. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sebastian said he wouldn't touch it. So.
Next is MicroStrategy, MSTR. I think this is the one you have covered a few times, I believe.
I've covered it a few times. I think Nate covered it a few times as well. Oh. This one's gone absolutely nuts compared to Bitcoin, which is just not moving. But MicroStrategy seems to be just going crazy. Really broken out of this kind of line, I suppose, not the most cemented resistance point. You could probably call it a resistance zone if you traded in this zone. A bit of a retest and obviously a massive move higher. One that I will not be trading just because it's kind of making its move. And I don't really like things that have kind of already made the initial move. I like to try and get in fairly early in the move and then go from there. But if it does come back down to this kind of 182, 180 level, then I'll be interested for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one. And the only thing I'll add is the short interest is 14% on MicroStrategy. So, it could still play out. But, I think I agree with you that once it's already made a move, I'm a little bit worried on the how it will react. Next one is some interesting one. It's called IMMR. That's also from Sebastian. Immersion Corp. Let's see what did they do.
Oh, it's below the 200 moving average. It's below recent support. It's coming up to retest it. So this is like the opposite of a breakout trade. It's like a breakdown trade for me. I don't actually know what they do, but you'll tell us about that in a minute.
Very interesting. So they engage in the creation, design, development, and licensing of haptic technologies. So if you're on the iPhone, the haptic touch, they do all that good stuff. Very interesting.
I wonder why they've been beaten up a bit then. I guess it's
they have a strong buy from Wall Street. That's interesting.
Must be something to do around patents or something like that then.
Yeah, could be.
Kind of unique technology. But from a technical point of view, it does not look good, in my opinion. You've got the volume shelf above here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep saying here. But 870 is kind of volume shelf territory. 200 moving average is the same sort of thing. And the 20 moving average, that's 3 points of confidence from the sell side, let alone the fourth point that you could say that this is kind of bit of a lower point, but the support. So, I mean, it's tricky. But I mean, you never know with these stocks, do you? I'd have to look into this more on the fundamental side to get excited.
Okay, I think we have three. Unfortunately, we don't cover gold and silver. Unless do you cover gold and silver? I don't trade gold, silver, so I don't have much to.
Not really. I have them more towards kind of long-term thoughts, but obviously as we're talking about trading, we probably don't really need to cover that so much. Maybe one day we will.
Then we have 4 tickers requests: TIGR, Unity, Adobe, and Tesla. So for anybody who's looking for Tesla, you can definitely go check out my channel. I did the video for Friday, so it's pretty recent. You can check out over there.
So this one's Up FinTech Holding Limited. And this one is one of those crazy ones which basically didn't move for a few years.
Up? Actually, use Unity software.
No. Oh
You
no, I thought you said Tiger first.
oh,
TIGR.
Tiger. Oh, interesting. TIG.
So TIGR, lots of volume created around this area, but I mean, it's a rocket stock. I like to call them rocket stocks. This one made a move of 295%. Is that it? And obviously came down. You could probably go as far to say it's kind of testing halfway Fibonacci. So that's what I'm going to draw now. So let's say, for example, there. So we're kind of trading within that kind of middle section.
This one, you don't even draw anything. It's like just. I don't want to draw anything on this one. This has already made its move. I don't know if I want to get in. I mean,
Exactly.
not saying it cannot make the move again, but it's a vertical takeoff. Generally, I stay away from those stocks.
Let's have a look at the volume. I imagine it's probably dropped off. Yeah. You see at the bottom there, the volume dropped off massively.
Yeah.
Picked up a little bit last week and on Friday. But yeah, I mean, like you say, kind of made its move.
Next up is Upstart. Unity.
Yes.
I believe you covered this, or Nate covered this sometime back.
Yeah, I've had this a couple of times, I think. Haven't traded this in many months now, but it looks like it might be trying to give it a go in the upwards direction.
It does. However, the 2220 has been acting as a resistance for the stock for multiple times, especially after they couldn't sustain it. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touches. So it's definitely trying to break through that.
2220, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. See what other lines I've got drawn. You see what I was trading it. I was trading it around these sorts of levels. I think the biggest challenge for this one is the 200 moving average. You can see it's kind of tried and tested here, failed on a number of occasions, and obviously subsequently moved a lot lower. But it does like the 200 moving average, so maybe there could be potential small short trade possibilities, depending on where the market is at that point. But yeah, generally it's trending upwards, which we like to see. But for now, I think it's a bit of a sit on your hands stock.
Actually, when I changed my chart over here, 2024 has been a good support, but I think the 200-day moving average will be a big resistance on this one.
It's definitely fighting to hold this 20 moving average. That's for sure.
Yeah. The last one is Adobe.
I prefer other stocks though, definitely. Adobe, cool.
Adobe.
Oh, this one's not good.
This has been a while since I last looked at Adobe.
It's gap galore.
So
we've got a gap on the upside and a gap on the downside. So the gap to the upside is 570. Gap to the downside is 571. So I think current trading action, I would like it to fill this gap at 470, and that's why I would look to maybe make an entry depending on where the market is.
Yeah, you're right. So they're still trying to fill that gap, actually, the first gap that you're talking about.
This one here, yeah.
Yeah, they're still in the process of. So I wouldn't be surprised if actually they come down, fill that gap, and then make a move up. Let's see if there is any.
That's what I'll be looking for.
Their earnings are coming up in December, mid-December, 12, 13. So still far ways from it. Wall Street has a buy rating on this one as well. Mostly good news and good coverage on Adobe.
It's tricky because obviously AI has been a subject for this one as well, taking the kind of business away from it, in terms of creativity. But I mean, I know they're involved in AI as well. They've got Firefly as their model. I've used it a few times. It's not as good as Grok, for example. I think Grok, especially image generation, is really good.
I honestly in the image, I think Midjourney is still hands down the leader in generating images.
So I mean, Adobe's nowhere near it. Is what we're basically saying. There are other products, of course, fantastic. Obviously, got Lightroom, which is really good for photographers and creative side of things. You've got the editing software. I keep forgetting what it's called. What's it called?
Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop and
the video editor too.
The video one.
Yeah, I don't use it, so I don't know what it is. Adobe.
People swear by it. They really do.
Yeah. It's pretty expensive though.
It is really expensive, and then you've got all of these other.
I use a cheap one. I don't use
Yeah, I use CapCut for me, and that's free, so it does the same thing in my opinion. Anyway, yeah, from a technical point of view, I think fill 470 and make a move higher, essentially.
Right.
Is that it? Is that the last one?
Sebastian says this is an options candidate for Kaye, but a shitty company. Well, I stick with the semiconductors and big seven. Or if I want to own from a SaaS standpoint, I think there are other better candidates like Snow, Datadog, or even software like Monday. I think those are that have much more room to run. But yeah, I think so. We actually did not cover all requests for somebody for Fanny Microsoft. We did cover Microsoft as a first candidate, so we definitely rewind and check out the thoughts on Microsoft that we talked about. But yeah, Sean, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, of course. I think it's been a really fun week, and we've had lots of requests this week. Had over 2,000 viewers, we obviously really appreciate that. And I want to say a big thank you to Wolf again for letting us use the platform, because we probably wouldn't have that many if we weren't linked with him, of course. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting week. We've got basically no news. We've got lots of Fed speakers, so just be careful if you are holding trades through those kind of moments, because some statements can move the market. Pay attention to the news as well. Obviously, we do have lots of geopolitical stuff going on around the world, basically. So yeah, plenty to think about, plenty to keep on our toes. So trade management, again, probably is the highlight for me this week. I've got quite a few trades on, so I just want to manage them and make sure they kind of get to their target prices. And if they don't, am I limiting my risk by taking as much as possible, i.e. moving those stop losses up? But yeah, that's it from me really on that kind of side of things. Anything from you, Kaye, just to wrap up?
Just to wrap up, trade safely. And just for next week, we are going to be going live on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. GMT.
Awesome. Saturday next week.
And then we'll back again on Sunday routine.
Hopefully I remember that. I might have to watch this back just to remember that.
I will remind you.
No, awesome. I've got it. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Nice one. Thanks all. See you all next week.
Take care.